Welcome to ATD-TV and our first program of 2018. In this episode, you'll meet some of our first APTD credential holders who will share why they decided to pursue the new certification. Our In This Corner segment looks at microlearning. You'll meet Kathryn Stafford, author of the new book titled Work the Problem, and you'll get a sneak peek at our upcoming international conference in San Diego. Let's get started. ATD launched a new certification in 2017, the Associate Professional in Talent Development, or APTD. The first cohort of candidates tested last year, and 99 professionals received their APTD in December. We asked a few of them to share their thoughts about the experience and what they've noticed since becoming certified professionals.
There was a lot that motivated me to become an APTD. I'm beginning in my career now, so I needed something to really differentiate myself. There's a lot of talented people in the talent development world, so I was looking for a certification just to become more knowledgeable about different areas of expertise. So the APTD did that for me.
I was really excited by doing something new. I think for years I've worked in the training space and wanted to have something to show for my work. And the CPL piece was just a little bit more than I thought that my role encompassed. So it was nice to see a program that really encapsulated the type of work that I do.
I told people that I was going through the certification as a way to further my understanding of the profession and to be able to contribute more to my organization and to really be that knowledge base that others in my department, but also on a wider organizational level could come to for information and advice or just suggestions about trends, history, the field in general.
Having a certification is huge. It not only differentiates you from others that are maybe interviewing for the same position, but also it allows you to speak knowledgeably to what you're going to be doing in your role, whether you are an instructional designer or a talent development manager or a facilitator. So it makes me feel confident making decisions in learning and development.
I think that certification sets you apart, and I think that it's about investing in yourself and kind of making sure that folks, outside of your department or your job know that you took the time to kind of really invest in the knowledge base that you have and really have something that kind of shows for it.
Well, I think that's the thing. When you come into a role where you don't have classical experience, classical training, and you want to show something that encapsulates what you've done and represents the work you've done, it's a lot harder in that environment because you couldn't really just say, oh, I'm a facilitator. Well, no, I'm not really a facilitator. Oh, I'm an e-learning developer. Well, no, I'm not just that. So having a credential shows that I can do a lot of different things in the industry besides just standing up and teaching a class one day or just standing up and making an e-learning one day. There's a lot of things that we do. So it's nice to have a way to represent the different elements of your profession.
I mean, the talent development space is it's a lot more complex, I think, than some people realize. And I think that, again, APTD is a great stepping stone to kind of get your entree into multiple areas of the TD kind of world or space.
I have definitely noticed since receiving my APTD that I'm taken more seriously in my role. I can confidently make decisions on how I approach developing my training, and it helps to make the learner's experience more meaningful too, because I can really focus on what impact is my training having on the business.
I would say that studying for the APTD was a great process in and of itself, really going through the materials, the information, understanding more about the profession that I hadn't necessarily recognized, and also really figuring out ways of how I could apply that information to my role, seeing what gaps my organization had or what I can do to incorporate that and really utilize the information.
Microlearning. It's a popular topic in the field. In our In This Corner segment, ATD's Amanda Smith dives deeper into the topic with two practitioners.
So microlearning, that is something that we are hearing. We know that is some of the trends that we've been seeing in different talks and education that's been out right now on design learning. This is not a new thing, I don't suspect, and I would love to hear what you all have to say about it. Is microlearning a buzzword? Jonathan, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I would say that it's a buzzword in the sense that we have a label to something that we've been doing for a long time. Microlearning as a concept is just about the intentionality of how you're designing your learning. So people have been doing that for a long time within their longer courses. Each individual module or each lesson within that curriculum, you can make the argument that that is its own microlearning event. I think that what's being added and what's the value of what is going on now with the discussion around microlearning is that intentionality, that purpose behind everything that you do. And so there's a little bit more design thinking in the way that it's being produced.
Absolutely. Adele, would love to get some reaction on that.
Yeah, I totally agree that it is part of a larger learning approach. I look at it as macro learning. So the macro learning might include, it is a body of knowledge, or it's a skill area, or an ability. And what we're doing is we're taking what would be like a curriculum and we're putting in micro learning pieces where it's appropriate. And that's that whole, when he talked about intentionality, it's like it has to be appropriate for the learner. What is their access to technology? But most importantly, what's the goal of the learning?
So I know one of the things that people love about microlearning is the time. People are on the go. They want their information quickly and accessibly. We'll love to hear what other things besides time, though, that people have to consider when they're doing microlearning.
Microlearning forces the designer to really think about what it is they're learning. So for a microlearning session to be successful, it should only have one learning outcome, one learning goal. And it has to be very, very clear. There's no room for fluff in microlearning. And so by necessity, microlearning forces you to be a better designer. I'd also say that it also provides the learner autonomy, which is something that helps learners absorb the information a little bit easier. And so the learner can take modules in any order that they choose, but it's a cohesive whole. Like Adele was saying with the macro learning environment, each module is its own self-contained piece, but it's part of a larger whole.
I think what you have to do is you start with one objective. As we say, it has to be very specific, very chunk size, and then we call it bite-sized pieces of learning material. I think also using real-world examples, making it practical, making it relevant. When you're designing, also using a lot of visuals to make it and to catch people's attention. As well as scripting it out, making sure that you script out carefully what you intend to present to the learner.
So I'm hearing scripts, relevancy, making it visual. Any other considerations one should consider when they're actually designing microlearning, Jonathan?
Yeah, so looking at the limited amount of time and space, if you're thinking about an e-learning or even a video, everything on the screen needs to have some purpose. It has to be important to the learning. And that's to really maximize on the cognitive load of the learners themselves. So any extraneous information should be taken out of the microlearning environment, and only germane and pertinent information remains. And again, that forces you to think about what is your learning objective and what do you need to tell your learners in order for them to learn it well.
If we were to put traditional learning and microlearning up against each other, Adele, would love to kind of hear, what would you say was some of the big stark differences that one would see right away?
Well, I think what you would see right away is people would get right into the content. So instead of having the introduction, you go right straight to the content. In addition, that tell, show, repeat, or tell, show, and do, that actually ends up being a show and do, a combined show and do, because we're trying to show it as quickly as possible. We're trying to actually show contextualized examples at that point of need, similar to electronic performance support systems over 20 years ago.
Ooh, so brushing up the cobwebs there. Whoa.
So I think a lot of it also is making sure that you test your video on different platforms. A lot of times when you do regular video, it's on one platform, but because this might be on a telephone or a smartphone, an iPhone, an iPad, a tablet, we might even be using a TV to access the internet. We have to make sure that it appears the right way on all of those particular technology mediums.
Excellent. Certainly a lot to consider there. Any last minute remarks, Jonathan, on microlearning as a whole, something you think people should just really make sure that they're aware of before getting into it?
You can take a long e-learning course that, an hour, 2 hour long engagement, and you can create a microlearning ecosystem with that. And so even if you're not going to create microlearning sessions, just take the idea about being intentional about all of your learning objectives and being intentional about what you put on the screen, and it'll make any training that much more relevant and useful for your learners.
I love, love, love what you said about ecosystem. It's not just slapping a video or slapping a gaming feature on there. It's really works as a whole with different microlearning segments involved. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I do appreciate your time.
Problems. Every workplace has them, but not everyone has a good way to solve them. Kathryn Stafford wrote a new book called Work the Problem, an interesting book that draws on the experience and insights of several subject matter experts. Recently, Kathryn shared some thoughts about the new book.
I was on a webcast last fall with someone who was talking about innovation, and he was very energized. And when calls started to come in and somebody asked, what do I do if my manager's not on board? And the guest expert said, I would quit. And one of the first things I thought when I heard that was, I would like my book to be a book about not quitting. So I wanted to create options for people. It's not that quitting is necessarily a bad thing, or it's obviously a solution in lots of circumstances, but I did kind of see this as the anti-quitting book. Well, it's an engineering phrase, and I'm not an engineer, but I'm an engineer's daughter, and so I heard this when I was growing up, and I was a trig student when I was a teenager, frustrated by trig problems, not understanding variables, and my father would very dispassionately say, just work the problem, it's there, just work the problem, which is what, he's not the only engineer who's approached problems that way, and it never left me. It's just fascinating to me that even after I became an English major, that work the problem kind of stayed with me. I think the fascination or the appeal of it is that the solution is underneath the surface. It's there, apparent, if you would just focus. And maybe when you're a kid, maybe that's part of the frustration, but I think to all of us in the workplace, there's a satisfaction and a beauty to it, realizing that we have resources to work problems. So there's no toolkit in this book, and there's no questions to explore at the end or anything like that, because I think the strength is in the stories. That's what I found that worked. And I also found that was the energy that the subject matter experts all brought to it. They really got into the stories of it. It's a little book. It's only 10 chapters, but everybody who has looked at it, and I know some of these are people who know me well, so they can be prejudiced, but they say, this is really cool, this is really interesting, I didn't know this. And so I think without being scientific and without being too trainer-y, I think it hits on a place, an identifiable place for a lot of people. One of the beauties of this book that I haven't mentioned yet is how it helps managers and people who are trying to manage up. and people who maybe lose sight of the whole environment of their workplace. And so it helps you kind of see that, that forest. Members of ATD will really enjoy because it touches on so many different industries. It touches on finance and healthcare and nonprofits and people who look at their management position in different ways, being squeezed in different ways, or new things like in healthcare and finance and how banking has changed.
Kathryn's book will be available at the ATD 2018 bookstore. And speaking of ATD 2018, we are gearing up for what will be a memorable conference. A great location, amazing keynote speakers, and our 75th anniversary are just a few of the highlights. Take a look. Celebrate 75 years of ATD by joining us at the ATD 2018 International Conference and Exposition, the largest event in the world for talent development professionals. We're planning a memorable experience that includes all the things you love about ATD, plus special giveaways and a lineup of extraordinary keynote speakers: President Barack Obama, Marcus Buckingham, and Connie Podesta. With more than 300 sessions, 400 speakers, and 10,000 attendees from all over the world, ATD 2018 provides you with the most choices for your professional development. Learn directly from world-renowned experts at the forefront of the industry. Take away strategies and real solutions to your top challenges. Stay ahead of trends for designing, delivering, implementing, and measuring your learning programs. Join us in what's called America's finest city, San Diego, California, for the event everyone will be talking about for years to come. You help create a world that works better. This is the event to help you work better. This is ATD 2018. We hope many of you will join us in San Diego May 6th to the 9th. That wraps it up for this episode of ATD TV. Thanks for watching, and thanks for helping create a world that works better.